Happy Friday, sports fans. I'm Mike Langelier. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm the CEO of TechPoint. And we're happy that you all joined us today. Sellout crowd, 225 registrants this morning. So we're looking forward to our panel. Thank you guys for joining and sharing this morning. Before I turn it over, a couple quick things that of interest. Many of you may be familiar with the Mirror Awards coming up on May 2nd. It's the Oscars of Tech in Indiana. Between 800 and 1,000 people, 14 awards that will be given away this year. And if your company is not a sponsor of it, it happens because of people who contribute to help make it happen. If your company's not a sponsor yet, Annie in the back right there is your person to help get in front of that tech community crowd. Also, we're going to have all of the nominees. We had 163 companies that applied, and we whittled that down to, what, Joshua, about 110 or so nominees, and then those nominees did interviews, and we determined who the winners are going to be. Well, those nominees are going to have the opportunity to come and do a quick pitch at our Tech Thursday event coming up the third Thursday in April. And we're working on the site location for that right now, but it will likely be a downtown location. If you guys want to come and hear those companies and what they give the quick pitch of what they do, it's a great opportunity to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brian McGinnis, who's our moderator, attorney here at Barnes & Thornburg. Thank you, Barnes & Thornburg, as always, for making this event possible, hosting, and for breakfast, and also for Lightbound for their long-term sponsorship of this event as well. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
Good morning, everyone. So, hot mic, here we go. Had a little opportunity to do some research this morning on my way in, felt compelled to do it, and the answer is no. -1 degrees is not colder than the 1967 Ice Bowl football game, which I thought it might have been. We're pretty close, but we didn't quite get there. My name is Brian McGinnis. I'm an attorney here with Barnes & Thornburg in the Internet and Technology Group. We get to do a lot of work with younger stage tech startups in new media marketing, and so to hear what these guys have to say from the sports perspective today is something that's pretty exciting for me, and I think for all of you. We've seen a lot of excitement about this event leading into it, so I can't wait to get started here and talk with these guys. Before we do, though, I want to say hello out there in internet land to the Southwest ISBDC Evansville location, which is joining us via satellite. We've got Scott County Economic Development Corporation is also joining us, as well as the Purdue Technology Center, Northwest Indiana, Maryville. And thank you to all of you who are joining from our remote locations today. So without further ado, let's get going. We've got three great panelists up here. Sitting to my left here, we've got Rob Laycock, who is the Vice President of Marketing at Pacers Sports and Entertainment, which owns and operates both the NBA's Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. Rob's been with the Pacers since 2005. Was an IMS Pitt reporter for 7 years, which is interesting, and 3 years in your current role. And Rob is focused on increasing the number of people who are proud to call themselves Pacers and Fevers fans through promoting visibility of the teams in the market, building connections with the fans, and providing easy ways to buy tickets. 2013, Rob was a IBJ 40 under 40. In 2009, was named one of 5 NBA executives driving change by the Sports Business Journal. Rob, thanks for coming. Let's start with you. If you could, just give us a little bit of an overview in terms of what you do for the Pacers and what your job entails.
Yeah, everything you said, it hits it on the head. Essentially, I want people to be proud to call themselves Pacers or Fever fans, and that's true company-wide. And so inevitably, that's coming to basketball games in Bankers Life Fieldhouse. That's coming to concerts as well. As you mentioned, as Brian mentioned, we run all the shows that come through Bankers Life Fieldhouse. But obviously, coming in here in Indiana, I'm a basketball guy, born and raised on the west side there in Brownsburg. So motivating fans to come to games is my primary job.
Go Bulldogs. Do we have any football fans here today at all? Any Colts fans by chance? Maybe? Yeah. Any Patriots fans here? All right. I thought we might have to kick somebody out for the first time in the history of New Economy, but not today. All right. Dan Plumlee, Director of Interactive Media with the Indianapolis Colts. Been in the current position since 2006. Before that, worked for, looks like several different companies doing development work, batteries.com, Local Web for You, Healthcare Communications Group. Dan, tell us a little bit about what you do for the Colts.
I run the digital department. So my primary focus is to ensure that I'm assisting, am I not live here? So my primary focus there is to support all of our different departments, our marketing, our events, our ticketing departments in using social media as well as mobile apps and the web to obviously promote ticket sales, to create that next level fan through social media, to drive traffic to the site. So that's kind of my role is facilitating all of these different areas and making sure that they gel well as sponsorship integration. I'm sure Rob will talk a little bit more too. Being in a small market that we are, we have a lot of sponsors. We're not like, I always pick on the Giants. We're not the Giants who can go out and get $2 or $3 million sponsors to support our entire year. We're more 200 plus sponsors. So it's making sure that we integrate those sponsors, that their brand is represented well with us, as well as our brand is represented well with them.
Tom Dunmore, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Operations, Indy 11. Who was part of selling out the first inaugural season of the Indy 11 in Indianapolis? Anybody been to a game? Tom's been to a game. That's great. So Tom has served in similar capacities with different soccer teams prior to coming to Indianapolis in Indy 11, moved down from Chicago. He's also a leading soccer writer, editor, and publisher. He's authored of 2 books, Soccer for Dummies and The Historical Dictionary of Soccer. Founded the award-winning soccer website Pitch Invasion and the print periodical 11 Quarterly, which are 2 of the leading outlets in long-form soccer writing. Tom is originally from Brighton, England, and lived in Chicago for 13 years, coming down to Indianapolis. Tom, what do you do for Indy 11?
Indy 11 is a little bit different than the other ones up here. I feel a little bit like the schoolboy sitting at the big boys' table with the Colts and the Pacers. We have 15 people that work in our office, so we're a lot smaller, and that means we all wear multiple hats. So I oversee marketing and operations. That includes community relations, merchandise, public relations. So a lot of the departments at Indy 11, which is good and bad, right? It's really good because it allows us to be nimble. It allows me to make really quick decisions across departments because when we come up with a crazy marketing initiative for one of our games, I'm also the one who has to execute it on game day. So I create my own headaches and then I have to solve them on game day. But that can be a good thing too because it allows us to move quickly and have promotions that are fun and exciting without having to jump through a lot of hoops. So it's a very fun team to work for. We have a president, Peter Wilt, who's been a president of a soccer team for 30 years now. There aren't many people who can say that in the United States. He started 4 different teams around the Midwest, been extraordinarily successful. So Indianapolis is very lucky to have a guy like him come in and oversee the launch of Indy 11. And my day-to-day job is ultimately, though, similar to these guys. It's about engaging the fans, making sure they're passionate about their team. Tribalism is the key to sports. We all know that. It's about everybody caring more about their team than about sometimes almost everything else in their life, or at least it can feel that way for 90 minutes in our case. It's a way to escape from the rest of your life. So we want that passion to always be carrying through. We have a unique advantage in our case with the Brickyard Battalion, our supporters group. If you've been to an Indy 11 game, they're the 2,000 guys who look like they're completely crazy at the West End, waving flags and singing songs the entire game, never letting up. Even though we didn't win a lot of games in our inaugural season, they kept going until we won one, and then they invaded the pitch and brought their smoke bombs out there and picked up our players and carried them around the field. So it's moments like that we build towards, which are unique in the soccer world. And ultimately my job is to foster that, make sure it's responsible and within the bounds of family entertainment, but keeping it exciting and fun, and that's what gives us our edge.
Excellent. So we're going to spend a lot of today, obviously, talking about new technology and the way that we are marketing sports today and how your guys' job has changed. Before we get going, though, I want to establish sort of a bit of, tell us a little bit about the traditional ticket sales model. Traditionally, what's the sports model for you guys? It might vary from other businesses. How do you go about, putting butts in the seats? If anybody wants a drinking game for today, I think putting butts in the seats. Every time you hear that, take a shot of coffee. I think it's probably the phrase that we're going to use most often. But real quick, though, Mike wanted me to remind everyone, hashtag NENR on Twitter if anybody's following along there. And then we've got note cards on everybody's table. If you want to ask questions, please do fill that out. They'll get those up to me, and we'll get in there. So, Rob, why don't you kick off? Just give us a quick overview. Ticket sales in the sports arena, how is that different in your job traditionally than it is in other marketing of other products?
Yeah, historically, you were always worried about selling the season ticket plan, and the only focus was on selling that full season ticket plan. And really, time has become one of the greatest commodities, and even more so than sport being the motivator to attend, it's having the time to attend. So the full season ticket plan really became not obsolete, but to a point where it wasn't for everybody. So you started to see over time a half season ticket plan, a 10-game plan, and even micro packs of 3 or 5 game packs that allow somebody to go to 1 game a month versus attending literally every game. In this case, in the month of March alone, I was telling them earlier, we have 10 games this month. So that's difficult for those that are very busy in their life. Where technology has helped and kind of changed the game a little bit is that single game tickets were an afterthought. It's whoever showed up the day of game, it was your walk-up crowd, and it was the few hours leading up to it, the box office was open, and you were selling those tickets. But now single game tickets is much more of a strategy in 2 ways. One, it's certainly more of a revenue driver as people will throw down bigger money on single game tickets that you wouldn't have seen historically. And 2, it's your entry point to one day getting them to become a full season ticket holder. So the reason I said the full season ticket plan isn't dead is that overall from a marketing strategy and even just a business philosophy over the Pacers and Fevers, that we look at it as more of a dating strategy where that single game ticket is that first date. And even though you can get married overnight, you could get married, you certainly could do that. That would be jumping right into that full season ticket plan. We see over time going on that second date, which would be that second game, jumping up that next year into that micro pack or that mini plan, which is kind of you're in a committed relationship at that point. And then taking the plunge, getting married, at one point going to that full season ticket plan. And at that point, you probably have your neighbors and your coworkers knowing that you have tickets, asking you for seats. You're more aware of the secondary market capabilities, where now it used to be an ugly word to sell your tickets to somebody else. Now we actually can help you verify those tickets and provide a central hub that authenticates your selling process and the buying process. All those points later on going into it would certainly be data points to allow us to continue to build you as a fan of the Pacers.
But to be clear, you encourage shotgun weddings where people just jump right in and buy the season tickets, okay?
You just got to be prepared for them to get divorced quickly. So that's why we have a very dedicated service staff that knows when they do jump on board, they might jump off board quickly.
Yeah, excellent. Dan, how's it changed since you started with the Colts?
Definitely season ticket members are an important driver for us, and it's a huge focus, and we've been lucky to have a winning team which really helps push and drive those ticket sales automatically for you. But I think the organization as a whole realizes that you cannot just stand on that. Your team's going to have bad years, as you all know a few years ago when we had one of those. I don't like talking about that. But it's using all sides of the company. I like to highlight social a lot because I think social gives a person a really good perspective of what a Colts game is like. So, one of the keys for us is to convince people, yeah, it's really easy and it's really great to sit at home and watch the game on the couch. Sometimes it's much easier, your bathroom's closer, all these things. But it's trying to give these people that inside glimpse through social and through email marketing of, one, what it's like to experience a game, all of the in-game stadium amenities that we offer the fan, and very much to what Rob said, at least get them into that single game so we can show them that it is worth the drive, it is worth the time being there. So I think as an organization, we've tried to look at all aspects, and instead of the old days, which was just take a email list of 200,000 people, send out a mass email, I call it throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. It's more of looking at that big data, it's looking at trends, it's seeing how these people are responding and interacting with you to then engage them. And I think, going back to the social media thing, it's looking at that 14-year-old to 21-year-old who is starting into their career, is going to be able to afford coming as a season ticket member, and they're going to make that lifelong investment. That we want to encourage that. We don't want to ignore those people. We always want to make sure that we are paying attention to all levels of our customer base.
So, Tom, you've got obviously a different job as opposed to trying to sell tickets for a team who just won the Super Bowl or just drafted Andrew Luck. You guys are starting from scratch, so you've got to build awareness. You've got to tell people, hey, there's professional soccer in Indiana. How do you start, and how does, I guess, tell us a little bit about your story in terms of the strategy that you took to build Indy 11 from scratch?
Sure. Again, we did have an unfair advantage, even though we were starting from scratch. That our fans had already created passion for the team before we even launched the team. The fan base I mentioned, the Brickyard Battalion, they existed before I came to Indianapolis, before our owner bought the franchise to start the team, because they wanted professional soccer in Indianapolis and Indiana. They had a Facebook group. They were on Twitter. They had a logo. They had scarves. They had a fictional team called Racing Indy Football Club that they created. There were hundreds of them who already had these scarves and had this passion before our owner decided to make the investment in the team, and that was part of the reason that he did that. When he was doing his due diligence on whether Indy 11, what became Indy 11, would be successful, he brought Peter down from Chicago as a consultant to research the market. The biggest thing in favor, and frankly we knew quite a bit before we actually took the plunge publicly, was that the Brickyard Battalion already existed, this grassroots movement that were committing to season tickets, and not just that, but committing to being evangelists for the team in the community. And that is something that you can't buy. You can spend millions of dollars and you can't buy the kind of passion that thousands of fans talking about you all the time, telling their friends, hey, you've got to be part of this. If you like soccer, you've got to buy a ticket. You can't buy that kind of passion. So we had that unfair advantage from the beginning that other teams in our league haven't had. The timing was right for us, which was another big plus. Soccer is on this huge growth curve that we're part of. Since I came to the U.S. 15 years ago, it's been unbelievable to see how the sport has grown. 15 years ago, you couldn't find a European game on any cable network. You had to find the Italian restaurant that was open, at ungodly hours to watch the big championship games or pay hundreds of dollars for pay-per-view. Now you can't turn on a TV at the weekend on the morning without finding English soccer on there or Champions League on the weekdays. So that is something we were able to build on enormously. And ultimately, what we've done, and what I think is always the critical key to what we're trying to do, is remember that sport and soccer, it's not just another commodity. To kind of get to your original question about how it compares to selling other things, it's not like choosing between McDonald's or Burger King or Kroger or Marsh. It's part of your identity when you're a sports fan. You don't walk around wearing a Marsh hat or a Kroger T-shirt because you love that grocery store so much, but you wear a Colts shirt or a Pacers hat because you love that. And so you have to remember that your fan is not just another customer in the traditional sense that they're choosing, what's the most convenient or cheapest option for them. They're choosing to spend their time with you because they're passionate about it, because they really care about it, and that's a very fine balance. So you have to manage, and I don't even really like using the word brand, because I think that has some implications that do make it sound like another customer experience when again, I think it's part of identity. It's like liking a band or your favorite artist. It's more like that kind of passion that people have for sports. I'll give you a really bad example of how it can go wrong, because that can sometimes show it. Liverpool Football Club, who are one of the biggest clubs in the world from England, and they have a fan base that's been around for 120 years, and they're extremely passionate fans, and they recently signed a partnership with a major coffee company based out of the United States, and that coffee company thought it'd be a fun thing to do to create some social media buzz to recreate the Liverpool Football Club crest, which is a beautiful crest in the colors and the style, and including their coffee cups in the design, and create this crest that looked exactly the same, except it was in their colors with coffee cups on it and all kinds of things. And that backfired miserably for them on social media. It was ridiculed immediately. And that would be fine if it was almost anything else but sports, because people have that attachment to the badge, the crest, the logo, whatever you want to call it. It means something to them. It's kind of sacrosanct, and it shouldn't be messed with. And that's, from day one, our goal has been to create Indy 11 to have that feeling. When we created the brand, we deliberately didn't use kind of a cheesy minor league type splashy logo. We wanted something related to the city, which is why we used Lady Victory from Monument Circle. We used the colors of the city flag, and we shaped it as a traditional soccer crest. So we were trying to make sure we created elements that the fans would feel tied them to their city, gave them that tribal feeling, and was something that in 50 years could stand the test of time. A lot of the logos that we've seen created by soccer teams over the last 20 years, if you look at the Major League Soccer logos from 1996, the first season, almost none of them are the same anymore because they realized those 90s jazzy colors and they went with kind of the skateboard type coloring and feeling that was pretty out of date 10 years later. So you have to use something that has real resonance. You don't see the Colts and the Pacers messing too much with what they do, and that's the same thing we've been trying to do as well.
Yeah, the hot pink and teal is kind of out of favor at this point. So a lot of what you did was sort of tap into pre-existing social excitement over a theoretical non-existent football club in Indianapolis and tap into that and sort of ride that wave. Your guys' situation is totally different in that you were already here, people knew who the Colts were, people knew who the Pacers, and this all grew up underneath you. So let's talk a little bit more, and let's get into a little bit of details in terms of technology. How do you, I presume that there was a shift at some point in the way that you went about marketing this, and how do you sort of bring that into an organization that was already established in the way that it was operating?
Something that's actually really recent with us, and I think it shocks a lot of people. You look at organizations like the Colts or the Pacers or any of the other teams and you think, oh, they're well established. They already have their entire game plan down. And unfortunately, technology keeps us on our toes, obviously, with that. I think, yes, we did have a really established group of fans, obviously, when I came in. But a lot of those were in, I call them silos. So you had your social media silo, you had your Ticketmaster silo, you had your single game ticket silo. We actually recently in the last 2 years partnered with a local company, eImagine, and created our own event management software. So there was another bucket of people. So going back to what I was talking about earlier with just kind of mass emailing and throwing this against the wall, it was leveraging current technologies as well as making sure we were bringing all of that data into one place and truly getting a snapshot of the person. Using Rob as an example, I could go in and I could look at Rob and I could say he's entered X amount of social media contests with the Colts. He has a 5% open rate on an email with the Colts. He's only come to one game. So what is it that we're doing wrong or what is it we're doing right to make sure that we're trying to leverage that new fan? And I think that that's an ongoing, ever-building thing. There's numerous partners that we've teamed up with, third-party vendors, that actually give us visual aids to help look at what that data looks like, to put point values on people, which sounds bad, but it's really not. Almost like a loyalty-style program, to be able to say, okay, this is a very active and engaged person. We need to reward them. We need to reach out to them and say, hey, what is it that's keeping you from buying season tickets, from attending more than one game? So I think no matter what technology we throw at, it all goes back down at a very base level, which is listening to our customers, who are the fans, who give us that real-time feedback in social media saying, I don't like what you're doing here, or I do like what you're doing here. And to kind of piggyback off something Tom said with, their logo and their brand, I think that's one thing that we hold very dear is when we do team up with a sponsor, we obviously are looking for the sponsor's best interest as well as our best interest. And we're not going to suggest something to them that's going to make our brand look bad or not get that brand message out correctly for the two. So yeah. Rob?
10 years ago, you had a lot of silos, like you said, primarily because there wasn't alignment from ownership down or senior management down because it was emerging technology that was unproven. Now that's kind of behind everybody for the most part on sports teams. And the NBA, I think, was quick to jump into the data technology side, and particularly the social media side, for a couple of reasons. One that's not so obvious when I say it is that when you attend a game, you have the ability to sit on the court or the field, and that's a rarity in sports, racing, soccer, football, basketball. And so you're on the court, and that inevitably makes the players much closer to you, and therefore much more personal, individual brands. So you had players that were joining Twitter before teams were joining Twitter, just because they were used to connecting on an individual level to fans. Shaq was one of those first ones in the NBA to do that, and that's why he's got so many followers now. Whereas for football, with the helmet and pads on, they're a little more hidden. I don't know if that's the right word, but
No, that's excellent.
and so that connection was there at the very beginning, which then once they're on and once they say something, you can delete it if you want to, but it doesn't go away, as we've learned year over year, so you have to deal with it. So that was one thing that kind of helped break down some walls there, is that it's now happening, and now how can we mitigate any risk and also take advantage of it. But probably as important as that from our standpoint is that big vendors, big partners like Ticketmaster took the locks off the data to allow them to flow out. And so that allows you to connect to the event management software that you mentioned to then be able to have cross value. And then from that standpoint, you're starting to allow to have that quote-unquote 360 degree of the fan, where over the next few years I could see where instead of you going to a Pacers game and going and getting your drink and deciding what game night special from a merchandise standpoint you wanted and all those things, that because of a mobile app and because of the integrated technology, the arena customizes to you. And so you go in and it tells you, and the Colts are already doing this, it's especially more important at the NFL level than NBA, how busy the bathrooms are in your area, how short or long the lines are at your favorite merchandise or concession stands. There's a discount on the jersey of your favorite player. And all of that is because all of those data points are integrated. Maybe it's because you liked Roy Hibbert on Facebook, and that's tied into our central system, and that's why you got that push notification to get 40% off his uniform that night.
Yeah, so a lot of this is getting into all the data you guys are collecting. Big data, just mounds and mounds of it. And absolutely, we're going to get into the in-game experience for the fan, but just sort of from the outside perspective, what are you guys collecting? What are you finding most helpful? And then how are you deploying it? Tom?
For us, it's just so different than what these guys are able to do. We do have a large amount of data that we collect, and we do the kind of basic things with it, but we do not have the resources to do the kind of segmentation and research and targeting that the Colts and the Pacers do, at least not at this point, 2 years into the team existing, and not until we grow as an organization. So for us, technology is much more about simply a way to have more community interactions, more one-on-one interactions, and especially with influencers. So, for example, I spend quite a lot of time on the subreddit that covers Indy 11. For those of you that are familiar with Reddit, it's a very plugged-in tech area. I'm sure a lot of you in this audience are. And our subreddit isn't huge. I think there's about 700 subscribers to it, which isn't massive, but they're very plugged in and influential people. So if I'm on there answering questions, being proactive, making sure that our story is being told to them directly, I know that it's going to spread out from there really quickly because they're so passionate about the team. They're on social media. They're going to be going on Facebook and Twitter as well and retelling those facts and stories about the team. So it's about constantly being plugged in and listening very, very, very closely. We try to reply to everything. I'm on Twitter, our president's on Twitter, our owner's on Twitter, obviously Indy 11 is on Twitter, and from the beginning we've tried to be as open and honest as we can be in our feedback. In the early days when we set up the Twitter account, it was just me and Peter who manned it, our president, and he's tied to his BlackBerry all the time. Yes, he still uses a BlackBerry, but he's never going to give it up, I guarantee you that. But he'll respond, or he would respond within 30 seconds to any tweet at Indy 11 or Indy Pro Soccer as it was for the first few months. Right away with as clear and honest an answer as he could as we were putting the team together. So from the very beginning, fans were invested on a one-to-one basis in the team, and when they hear that answer right away from the horse's mouth, it doesn't have to be run through a PR funnel. They appreciate that very much. Our general email, if you email info@indy11.com from our website, goes to our president. He replies directly, usually, again, within about 1 minute, mainly because he's up 24 hours a day, and he'll either forward it to the appropriate staff member and copy the original inquirer on that, or reply himself if he can, and that instant connection is, I think, incredibly meaningful for fans. So, though we can't do some of the big data stuff, in so many little ways we try to build those connections and build those communities in the ways that we can.
Dan, do you have any experience with an owner who's active on Twitter?
Yes, I have a owner that's very active on Twitter, who's a huge help, and his daughters are actually coming along and following closely in his footsteps. I noticed everyone kind of chuckled about the BlackBerry. Actually, I have a better one. Not to outdo you on this. Andrew Luck, who's obviously a huge soccer fan, actually still carries a flip phone, which I absolutely love going in the locker room in a post-game victory, and you see all of the players on their iPhones and their Androids and everything else, and they're tweeting and they're selfieing and everything else, and then you see Andrew over there with his flip phone, and he's just replying to messages. And it just blows my mind to see, one, someone still using a flip phone. I know they're supposedly re-emerging, but I think that's a really unique experience and something that defines him. And I figure we would probably talk about integrating our players into our marketing efforts and everything. You think, well, it's hard because with him, number 12, our quarterback, we can't really engage him on Twitter or Facebook because he just doesn't take part in those. But yet we get to spin that around and say, how cool is it that he uses a flip phone? So we get to show pictures of him with his flip phone when I can sneak one in. But I think that's a cool little niche with him that appeals to a lot of people, that he's open and he's willing to be a part of social media for us, but he as a person just doesn't want to take part in it. He likes his flip phone.
And back to the big data piece a little bit, is the number one metric that you guys are still concerned with driving those ticket sales? I mean, all the engagement and getting kids involved when they're 14 and all that is great, but I mean, how do you measure the success of the program? Rob?
That's not because of big data. That's because that's the business.
Sure.
So concessions and merchandise don't sell in an arena without people buying tickets.
But all this
coming.
technology and everything, is that
inevitably you want to. The funnel gets wider and wider, and you ultimately want them to keep going into the point of becoming a ticket buyer. The foundation of all that is kind of twofold. One, the data security. Mm-hmm. So having a strong infrastructure and an IT team that understands making sure data is secure, because if that breaks, then you're going to get screwed. And then data respect. So just because you have everyone's contact information doesn't mean you can call, text, and hit them up on an individual level. That's true on a corporate level. Mm-hmm. So when you have those two as a foundation, then it just becomes a matter of what strategic direction you want to go, and then really what marketing automation platforms you have to allow that segmentation. Because if you're kind of old school in the approach and you don't have the softwares and platforms, you can still use Excel, you can still segment, but you're creating 10 different emails with 10 different pictures and 10 different call to actions. So if you know that of the couple 100,000 email addresses that they're broken down by the 15,000 or the 15 Pacers players, and the purpose is selling the uniform, you would want to put their favorite player in there. So instead of creating 15 different ones, having that marketing automation platform to do that makes it a little bit easier and a lot more personalized.
For any of you, is there anything that's sort of surprising about some of this data that you collect is able to move the needle in a way that you didn't think you'd be able to do, or any sort of particular strategy?
I think so, yeah. You asked earlier, what data is important, and I think for our organization, all data is important. And when we're putting out any type of survey or we're doing an enter to win contest, we're always changing and evolving what questions we're asking in that data. Because going back to Rob's point, maybe we are trying to push some actual merchandise sales. So to actually identify with the person, find out this is their favorite player, this is the style they like. Every year we find the bucket hats are absolutely huge. We put out pictures of Andrew Luck wearing the bucket hat at training camp, and everybody wants a bucket hat. But going back to always gathering that, because we were sharing, Rob and Tom and I were talking the other day, each department within our organization is actually looking at that data in a different way. Our events department is looking where we want to travel to. So they're trying to look where there's going to be not necessarily a large fan base, but if we're going on a grassroots tour, we want to make sure there's going to be some people there. So they're looking at data from that standpoint. Tickets are obviously looking at ticket sales. Our marketing department is trying to evolve our marketing message. I know Rob does. Tom, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you guys do this, but we do a marketing shoot every year with our players that's going to be for our billboards and our advertisements. It's seeing how well that message is received, how we need to change that. It's gathering data on billboards, newspaper ads, any type of ad we do to make sure that we're placing the proper advertising dollars in the areas that they need to be, whether it's a Facebook promotion or a billboard or a newspaper ad. So it's making sure that I don't think ever there's too much data. I think then it's just having a strategic plan of doing something with that data and always evolving and always changing and realizing, okay, we don't need to know that piece anymore. Let's stop focusing and worrying on that piece. We're in 2015 now. A lot of times we want to know what's your Twitter handle, what's your Instagram handle, how often are you on that, what are you engaging with us on that. So again, going back to ticket sales and advertising, we know, hey, if we push some money into Facebook for promoted polls, that's going to actually translate to revenue for the team.
Rob, what surprised you?
Big question. So I would say some of the bigger surprises are the research we've done on traditional media. So a lot of times people make the wrong mistake, and particularly people of my age group, because digital has tracking metrics and traditional doesn't. So how do you track whether a billboard or a traditional ad in a newspaper is effective or not? And so two ways that we have done that. So we partner with a third party to evaluate Pacers fans and how they respond to media as a whole, and we actually found that mall advertising was the number one. Well, we traditionally have not done mall advertising, which is odd because Herb Simon owns the Pacers. And so when I placed the ads a couple of years ago and made that recommendation, when our team made that recommendation, the assumption was we were just kissing up to ownership, which is a smart move, but wasn't the motivation in this case.
Good strategy.
So every December now, the past couple of years, we have promoted our zero fees promotion, where you can buy any game, any ticket with no online fees. And then that was another research piece that we got from surveys, that fans don't like having to pay fees in general, whether it's airlines, tickets, or whatever the case may be. So those came together very nicely for that monthly promotion, and then you have strong incremental sales, which all that research, that surprise of, man, that really worked. So then when you're looking at ticket sales at the end of the month, very excited about what that brought to the table.
So Tom, you guys are probably largely digital first, right? Are there any of these sort of everything old is new again, grassroots kind of things that you did offline that help drive sales or engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of had a two-tiered strategy when we launched, which was to be very active on digital. Obviously, it's low cost. It was a very easy way for us to interact and get our message out. But at the same time, we had a kind of a roadshow that we drove around the state doing community events. We probably did about 200 in our first year, something like that, almost one every day or two, and a lot of those were very basic. In the very earliest days, when the front office consisted of our president and me working as a consultant, we would have our president just basically put out on Twitter, hey, where do you want me to go next, and come for a meeting. So he was using social media to get the message out that he was looking to travel and talk about the growth of soccer and what people wanted out of the team, and someone would reply via Twitter or email and say, hey, come out to my bar in Kokomo or Muncie, and he would say, sure. 5 days later, he'd be there, and they would either bring out 50 people or 5 people, depending on the sheer chance of that person being well plugged in, networking-wise or not. And sometimes the events with 5 people were great because it was the 5 most important people in the soccer community in Kokomo. It was the head of the youth soccer club, a millennial who loves soccer, who's going to tell all his friends. So what was most important was reaching individually those influencers, shaking their hand, answering all their questions honestly, making sure we knew their feedback as we started to put the team together. So it wasn't just about being digital. That it would have been really easy just to have sat back with the website and social media, but it was getting out there in the community as much as we could, tagging on to community events as we brought on our community relations team, we kept hearing Indy 11 is everywhere. Our first summer out there, we didn't have games, so that made it a lot easier for us to be out there in the community, and that was the key for us to get the awareness out there that we were here to stay, that we wanted to understand what the community wanted. We wanted to be part of that, and we weren't just going to come into Indianapolis, especially with Peter and I both being new to Indy, though the rest of the staff we hired were from Indianapolis. For us two in particular, it was actually a great way for us to get to know the state and the city. Peter is just a very unusual man, but he suddenly decided one day last year that he would visit every single county courthouse in Indiana. So he drove out to every single county in Indiana just on a Sunday, drove there, took a picture, tweeted it, went to the local restaurant, met a few random people. But it was a great way for him to discover all of Indiana, and for people following him to realize, hey, this isn't just a guy who's coming here and starting another team, and then, he doesn't really care about the community. He's going to leave in a few years. It showed that he really wants to get to know the state and understand the geography and the demographics and the personalities all around the state, not just downtown where we're based. So absolutely, it's marrying those two, and it's unique now that you can use social media to spread the word and set up events like those, but the key is actually going out there and doing them and meeting people. That's never going to go away, I don't think.
I think we should get Mr. Simon to a barn in Kokomo from a random Twitter follower. What do you think? Let's switch gears. I want to get into the in-game stuff. The in-game experience for a fan went from, I have this really cool phone or device and I can't get on the internet because everybody else is trying to do the same thing, a couple of years ago, really. What are you guys doing now? How are you deploying the devices, the huge, massive computing power that people bring with them in their pockets every single game?
Well, it's funny. It was 2 years ago that I was actually at the stadium, and I'm horrible at photography. I took one of our team photographers' cameras, and I just started turning and taking pictures of the crowd. And the purpose for that was I came back in and I showed senior management and ownership that no matter how hard we're trying to put on a great halftime show, or no matter what we're presenting them in between plays or breaks, people are going to be on their smartphones. They're tweeting, they're selfies, they're listening to the game, they're doing all these things. And I felt like that it was just a turn in the last 3 or 4 years, really, that we've started to embrace that second screen experience. We've started to integrate with that second screen experience. One of the cool things that I really like is we started bringing multiple camera angles into the Colts mobile app. So you from your seat can bring that up, watch a replay. From a different angle, you can experience something from basically a different seat. We're very fortunate in the NFL that a lot of the teams, especially who host Super Bowls, the NFL partners with Verizon. So Verizon come in and says, we're going to give you all the bells and whistles. Now, what all those are, I don't know, to be honest with you. They come in and they say, we are going to make you guys' Wi-Fi hum. Do I agree with that all the time? Absolutely not. When we get 65,000 people all tweeting or whatever, it definitely slows down. I know one of the things that we try to do is we actually have 2 people in our booth that work with our mobile app vendor, which is Yinscam, terrific company. No, I don't get paid by them or anything, but I pay them a lot. Great company though, but they actually have a couple of people, as well as Verizon has a couple of people who actually set up in the press box. And they're watching all those access points in real time. And they're throttling that traffic based off of the areas. You do have certain areas of the stadium that I call dead zones because people aren't using their smartphones in those areas. They're just watching the game. I've never been able to really figure out who those people are or why. But you also have your hotter spots. So I think it's one, making sure you're getting the technology in place, talking about going back to like the iBeacons to where we're actually watching restroom wait times, which can sound really creepy, but it's not. I think it's very nice to sit in your seat and be like, okay, there's a 15-minute wait line for the men's restroom right now. I'm going to wait a little bit longer, or maybe I'm going to hold off on having that next beer. But it's those technologies that are important, and our partners like Verizon and Yinscam coming in and making sure that you're not just slapping the equipment in there and saying, hey, it's the best, go. It's actually going back to that game-to-game monitoring and changing up the dynamic in the stadium?
Yeah, so the motivation for Wi-Fi for us was twofold at first. First was media. Having big events in the building, they need to be able to do their job, and they need internet to do that. Second was fan-driven, and that's kind of how it flowed in a few years ago. But just like anything else, once we got the infrastructure in place of Wi-Fi, it provided new opportunities that probably weren't even thought of when we initially had the conversation with the Wi-Fi vendor. One, our basketball division has worked with SportsView to place 5 or 6 cameras in the catwalk of Bankers Life Fieldhouse with the sole purpose of collecting great data on that game's night. So every player is marked, and at 25 times per second, there's a data point logged every 25 times per second. That's a lot of data, and the basketball division uses that for their own analytics to just get another edge from a competition standpoint. I don't think that was envisioned when Wi-Fi was there. Even some of the elements you guys are doing with weight lines, those things come about when you have the infrastructure in place. How can we now use this? And so you get some smart people together, and you have a lot of opportunity come from it.
So get the tech in there first, and then figure out how to use it later on.
Yeah, and you obviously have to have a reason to rationalize it. Unfortunately, with Wi-Fi, it is very expensive because you talked about heat maps, and our IT staff will watch in real time connectivity levels, and we'll add APs, access points, throughout the year, where last year we added one right underneath the scoreboard because our front row season ticket holders were having trouble connecting. And one of the worst spots, or one of the best spots on the court now for Wi-Fi, is at mid-court. But when you have a concrete and brick building, it can be very, very difficult. I can't imagine what Lucas Oil Stadium is like. And so having that infrastructure in place, but always watching it. And so Yinscam has a feature within their app, and they've created our app as well, that that if you have an integration within the app where the fan is social checking in of any sort, using their login credentials from Facebook or otherwise, or if they have their email address tied to it, there can be an email sent to them letting them know, sorry, we noticed you had some lag time in your app when you're at the game. And that's especially important for you guys when you have video within the in-game experience, because one thing that the NFL has, which is a great product, is that red zone channel. And that can also keep people from going to games. Same with Fox Sports Indiana. When you can stay at home and watch the game, we have to keep that in-home experience great while making sure the in-game experience is great too.
And how do you bring that in-home user into the stadium? So they're sitting at home watching TV and they got their phone out.
Well, to get the in-home fan into the in-game, first and foremost, you have to have for us, we have a local TV provider. So Fox Sports Indiana is a local broadcast, where you guys are a national broadcast. So we have negotiated in 4 live drops, and all of those drops are promoting ticket sales, either tickets or merchandise.
Tom, I know you guys, even in your first season, are on TV. I don't know if all the games are televised, but I know all of them are televised. How do you get those people sitting at home who may not have been able to get one of the sold-out tickets involved in the game?
That's a good question. Our partnership is with Wish. All our games this season will be on Wish Channel 8. Ultimately, soccer is a little different than the other sports as well, because the action is non-stop. So even our in-stadium experience is very different. They're not necessarily, there aren't the breaks for them to get distracted as much by their phones and wanting to do that. They generally are watching the game, so clearly people are still interacting on social media, but it's not quite the same as for the sports, the stop-start. So that changes things in the stadium quite a bit. We didn't have any kind of Wi-Fi in the stadium last year. We are working with Bright House this year to have a partnership to be able to provide that to people that subscribe to cable systems at least, which will ease some of the burden, because frankly right now people can't have a lot of trouble even posting pictures because the cellular networks do get overloaded when people do that. So that's a challenge we're working through. We have a facility that was built in 1983 and hasn't had any upgrades or renovations until we came in and made some over the last year. So it's not quite Bankers Life in its abilities. In terms of the TV broadcast, we debated for a little bit whether to even broadcast our home games. Same argument all the sports teams have, and as was mentioned, I was in Chicago a long time, and there was a certain owner there who was very keen to never broadcast any home games, and that kind of killed the fan base for a long time for for the Blackhawks there, that people couldn't see their games, and by not showing them, sure, you force people to go to the venue, but you're not showcasing your best product, right, which is your games, your experience, the stadium, everything that's going on. You want people to be able to see that and want to be there. You know, when our games are on TV, they're seeing the action, they're seeing the Brickyard Battalion, they're hearing the songs and the chants, and hopefully they're thinking, hey, I've got to get out there to the next game. This looks awesome. This isn't like anything else I've seen. It's not what I expected when I heard we had a soccer team. There's a big crowd there. So for us, it's a way to showcase our best product. And we actually don't broadcast our away games right now. We're probably going to do one this year with New York, partly because around the league there are some varied levels of broadcast capabilities. It's, you know, they're not nationally broadcast games or even regionally broadcast in some cases, though the level is rising very fast. So we're going to be confident soon that we can broadcast our road games. But our goal is simply to showcase through Channel 8 what our home games are like and entice people to come out and experience them in person, which for soccer is the number one thing, because it's a non-stop sport that you really have to be there to appreciate the action.
Have you guys considered looking into a new stadium with new technology?
We might think about that. If you've got $82 million,
look into it. Yeah.
Let me know.
All right, guys, so I'm a big baseball fan. MLB's coming out with all sorts of just astonishing technology in terms of the way that they track movements of players on the field. And you look at some of the things that they're able to do, it looks like an EA video game with these guys running around anymore. It's hard to tell the difference between the video games and the real games at this point. Let's talk a little bit more about what you guys are collecting as leagues, and I assume it'll be primarily NBA and NFL, and that data and how that can be used to enhance the in-game experience. You've got more and more people into like fantasy sports games or management games and things like that. You know, really that's an experience that's really new and kind of unique to sports, where they're able to track these kinds of things about their favorite player, and how, you know, if you watch the World Cup at all this summer, you can tell how long the guys have run, what their heart rates are, like all this crazy data. How are you using that data, and is that available to the fans, and where do you see that going?
It's funny, we were talking on the phone the other day. We have what I guess some people would consider an archaic system in some aspects for data tracking of our players right now, where we actually have 2 cameras, one on each end zone, and we have a photographer who's actually taking pictures the second they break the huddle, and then they're taking 3 separate pictures while they're at the line of scrimmage, and they're doing that from both sides. And then we actually have camera runners who are going, grabbing that cards, and the NFL has a system that allows you to identify those players in those plays. So that's generating stats. We also have a statistician's booth where you've got guys who are actually inputting that in real time, and that's all going into the NFL system, which partnering like with Yinscam, the NFL offers that data right back out in a feed to Yinscam. So for our fantasy sports people, they can log on to the Colts mobile app and they can actually see in real time the stats. Running stats, playing stats, tackles, throws, all this good stuff, they're getting in real time as well as on the website. So it's also for your home users as well. It's providing them that fantasy. We've actually found a really unique stat that the average diehard fantasy fan is using 3 devices at their home. They're using their phone, they're using a tablet, and they're using their cell phone. So it's making sure that we're providing, either through the website or through the mobile app, good means for them to see and track that data as well as watching the game. So the system seems old. I definitely see the league moving more towards the motion tracking and the following the players. I do know that a couple of the teams have moved towards that, where they've actually surrounded their field with 4K cameras, which is a substantial cost to the club, as well as the infrastructure of it. But that's allowing them to get that data in real time and automated. So I see teams probably slowly moving towards that way, but again, I think it goes back to having that strong base infrastructure for your Wi-Fi, be it for sponsor integration or for stats and fantasy.
Rob?
Yeah, very similar from a fan standpoint, having those data feeds go into the mobile app with strong Wi-Fi, but also putting up, allowing better connectivity just from your cell device. But having those stats go through the app, it's fun to follow along. I think football is built a little bit more for that, because Basketball is probably between football and soccer in terms of activity on the court. We certainly have TV timeouts, which I don't know if you guys necessarily have TV timeouts like we do, but certainly that provides some opportunity from in-game. And then there's data points that the basketball division collects that aren't shared publicly. I mean, and even within the organizations, I don't see that data in the marketing department. And that's a good thing because they're trying to get a strategic edge. From a marketing standpoint, I have no problem sharing with other NBA teams the best practices that we use in our market. But from the basketball division, it's very closed, as it should be.
Got, 5-ish minutes left, and I want to dig into some of this player stuff because it's really interesting. So, and I'll let you guys determine what you want to talk about. But previously, we talked a little bit about the challenges of having personalities that are in some cases bigger than the club, or they've got more Twitter followers or Instagram followers than the team does. How do you manage those kinds of personalities? What happens when they leave, and how are you able to leverage those to really help make the teams go?
Yeah, so we're fortunate enough to have some guys, particularly Paul George, that have really strong followings. I mean, we have 2.8 million followers on Facebook. Paul's right around there. He has double the amount of Twitter followers we have. So he is one of our best. He's the most important marketing person we have in the organization, that's for sure. And so having Paul trust the people in our marketing division is crucial. So we attend every practice, we being the digital team. And in particular, our social media manager, Celeste, is her name. And Celeste has gotten a great relationship with Paul that he can trust her. So then having that foundation when we ask for certain things, whether doing a Twitter takeover or even promoting ticket sales, he's willing to do it because he doesn't feel like we're trying to take advantage of him to a point that puts him in a bad spot. It also provides the opportunity to have conversations and provide best practices and guidelines for them because when it comes down to it, sports and NBA's this way, NFL's that way, are driven by 20-year-olds. The best players on the court are in their 20s, and your sales staff are particularly in their 20s as well. And so to think from the player side that if all of us had, when we were 21, 22, or 23 years old, everything we've ever done or said documented forever, it would not be a great thing. And so, one mistake Paul makes is he's an idiot, so the media says, but, if I made that same mistake, I'm asking for forgiveness and probably got it. So that can be a very tough world to live in as a player.
I think we're very fortunate in having a lot of really big personalities. Pat McAfee obviously sticks out as one of the top ones for us. For us, what we usually try to do every year, and it is heartbreaking when you lose guys, especially ones you get close to or who are really active and engaged in your social media, but it's going to training camp, it's getting to know these guys, it's actually going on and seeing what they're promoting. A lot of the guys have their own private foundations that they support. So from our standpoint, it's the old adage, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's, hey, we're here to help promote you, we're here to help build your brand message up, and it's simple. They immediately latch on and they see what kind of leverage, your Mr. Irsay, 300,000 plus Twitter followers, us, our 370,000 plus Twitter followers, where we can help build their brand back up. And I think we also try to, every year, when we're looking at new web shows and stuff, this last year, Mr. Hasselback, who I'm grateful that he signed on for another year. He started his own show, which was like an X's and O's, where he picks a player, he sits down with them, and he does a play breakdown. That's great for your diehard fans who really understand the X's and O's of a football play, but it's also great for your casual fan who really is not that into the X's and O's but gets to learn a lot from that. Well, one of the reasons we reached out to him was he is so active on social. He automatically supports everything we do, so it was an easy marriage to say, hey, you come in, you do this with us, we'll promote you, you promote us. So I think it's building that trust, it's identifying those key players, and it's making sure that you continue that trust level with them to build a stronger relationship.
For us, similar to some of the other things that I've said earlier, it's a much more grassroots. It's much more grassroots initiative. Our players don't have millions of followers; they have thousands. So it's a little bit different, but again, it's a great way for them to interact directly with our fans. They're very good at that. We're fortunate that the soccer players just tend to be extremely down to earth. They make similar salaries to those that I do, so it's a different world. So they can relate in direct ways with our fans that I think our fans enjoy. They're very similar, again, in age ranges, as we've said. So there's a lot more direct connection points that can be made. Our players are very available. They don't travel during the week, so they're in the community a lot. So that's something that we can show and they can show on social media with all the community events that they do. They're out at schools and youth soccer clubs a lot. And so all those organizations love being able to interact with that on social media. But again, it's much more grassroots.
Just a couple minutes left. I'm going to squeeze in one more question. What are you guys excited about? What's coming next? What are you looking forward to in the next 3 to 5 years?
One thing we're bringing this year, and I think it goes back to talking about your infrastructure and your stadium and stuff, is we're partnering with a company called Vixie. And Vixie basically is a hashtag aggregator that's going to allow us to produce things on any size screen, including our Jumbotron. It's going to allow people, I mean, everybody knows the selfies. It's going to allow the people to be showcased on the Jumbotron, as well as some other screens that we'll have in Touch Downtown and this type of training camps and other places we're going to feature them. But without having that strong infrastructure and that strong base at the stadium, I mean, we're automatically setting ourselves up for failure with that. But that is something I'm really looking forward to, is continuing to embrace the in-stadium experience, continuing to build and foster the second screen experience, and to make sure that we're not trying to force people to put down their phone and watch the game. I see that that's an exciting area. It continues to grow quickly. Like, we partnered with H.H. Gregg last year. They created a cool little game. They put Blue in it. They went ahead and took all the costs to build the mobile app game, which I'm sure most of you know mobile app building can be quite expensive. They said, hey, how can we integrate this with you guys in the stadium? And we created a very cool in-game competition where third quarter we announced the winner. They get to go to the H.H. Gregg booth. They get to pick up their big screen TV or whatever. I think it's those kind of things that really excite me, because social is always going to continue to grow. We're always going to strive to bring some of the in-game experience to those fans at home, but I see the sky's the limit in stadium as to what we can do for the fans while they're there.
So enhanced kiss cam. I like it.
Enhanced kiss cam.
You know, we've only existed for 2 years, so thinking about 3 to 5 years from now seems quite daunting. But you know, hopefully we'll be playing in a new stadium, and we'll be able to grow. We'll have a professional women's team as well, so we'll be a lot more like the Pacers organization in many ways. So we'll just be able to do exponentially more than we can right now, which is exciting to think about, a little bit daunting. What I don't want to happen is, as we grow and as we embrace technology more and all of that, I don't want us to lose the authenticity and the direct connection to fans that we have now. I think that's the biggest danger our organization faces as we grow, that we'll start to lose touch a little bit. Clearly these guys do a great job of not doing that, but I've seen it in different places where organizations lose touch. I think in Indianapolis, it's maybe a little different because everyone here is pretty down to earth, and you know, it's not New York. So hopefully we'll continue to build that and find ways to keep that momentum going, embracing technology as a way to enhance that without making it become a divider from your fan base.
New York Giants are the worst.
Yeah, short term, from my standpoint, the Pacers are the hottest team since February 1st, so it's a stretch run to see if we can make the playoffs.
Buy tickets.
Yeah, long term, Adam Silver is doing something pretty unique and involving fantasy sports and how that evolves to gambling. And so gambling was a G word. You shouldn't have ever set it up to this point. But Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, if you don't know, is driving that change. And then one data point I heard recently is that 75% of gambling happens after tip-off. Now they're in either illegal means or in the 4 states that allow it. But there's a lot of opportunity there from a fan engagement standpoint. Obviously, from a revenue standpoint, but you're certainly more engaged when you have fantasy sports or something of the like. So I'm interested to see where that goes over the next 5 years.
Rob Laycock, Dan Plumlee, Dunmore, thank you very much. Please welcome, or please help me thank them.